Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome on stage Avi Reichental and Guy Gecht.
Morning. So the topic of 3D printing is very, very much in the news and very interesting for all of us here. Of course, also because of the second word printing, but we'll get to this. And we could not ask for a better guest as Avi, really one of the thought leaders, if not the thought leaders in this industry. So Avi, thank you very much for agreeing to come and joining us.
Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. So I want to get right to it. Right to it. Where is 3D today? What are the applications? What is really going on in the 3D printing?
Yeah. Well, a lot is going on. I mean, the first thing to remember, Guy, is that 3D printing became mainstream discussion in the last few years. But in reality, we're an overnight success that is 30 years in the making. Chuck Hall invented the first stereolithography 3D printer in 1983. At the end of March of 1983, he printed the first useful part and then went on to found 3D Systems. And what's interesting about him is that, in his mid-70s, he's our chief technology officer, and he works about 16 hours a day today.
Where is Gilad? Do you hear that?
So Gilad is not going to get early retirement. Is that what you're saying?
Not before 70, 16 hours a day.
And where 3D printing is today, it's one of these technologies that is touching everything. Unlike many other technologies, it's changing the way that we can envision design because it unlocks complete freedom of creation without the traditional constraints of manufacturing. Right? I mean, if you try to CNC machine something, you can't do curves and negative angles and things like that. If you try to fold something and bend it, you have restrictions. With 3D printing, because we're printing additive successive layers, you can create any feature that you want without any regard to complexity, and there is no penalty for complexity. So that is beginning to completely unlock freedom of design and freedom of manufacturing that is performance-driven. The other thing that's really exciting about 3D printing is that it kind of turns on its head the whole notion of economy of scale, right? I mean, in the last industrial revolution, we began to concentrate manufacturing, and because we concluded that if we could mass produce, we could reduce cost and democratize access to a lot of products, right, like shoes and clothes and cars. With 3D printing, the cost of one and the cost of 1 million parts is identical. So it's beginning to kind of turn this conventional wisdom on its head, and I believe that it will usher in a whole new era of distributed manufacturing. And beyond that, 3D printing is going to change personalized medicine as we know it, not just in terms of devices and implants, but eventually in the sense of personalized pharma and drugs in connection with other exponential technologies like sensing that could monitor your vital signs. It will change how we learn. It will change how we create. Yep. It will change how we play. Yep. It will change everything around us. So I can talk about it for days.
Well, we only have an hour, but I actually saw a story about a heart surgeon that practiced on 3D printed hearts. Is this really, you see more of that in medicine today, prostate?
Let me start by saying that what we call in our company 3D healthcare or personalized medicine is our fastest growing vertical already within 3D Systems. And over the last several years alone, we delivered over 50,000 personalized procedures, primarily orthopedic type procedures, head and neck type procedures, where the entire procedure is planned from your digital data, from your MRI, from your CT scan. And then we model it, we can simulate it in software, we can print not only the implants, but all the surgical instruments, the guides, the jigs, the fixtures that would fit you perfectly. And we can rehearse it in advance because we also have virtual reality technology now. And we're also the leading company in simulation, in procedure simulation, through an acquisition of an Israeli company that we recently made, Symbionics. So as we envision some 50,000 procedures later, we're envisioning now what I think of as a digital thread that takes you all the way from your own data that we could get from an MRI or a CT scan to a complete procedure that a surgeon can deliver with complete assuredness. And when you think about things like full knee replacements, which companies like Conformis, which is a good client of ours, is delivering today in a bespoke way, in the traditional sense, Guy, it takes about 500 procedures for a good orthopedic surgeon to become proficient. So you wouldn't want to go under the knife when they did procedure 389.
Okay, that's a good idea. Yeah. That's a good advice. So out of the 50,000 procedures, how many you would say roughly you really use the 3D to simulate that and practice, and how many they actually did something that was printed 3D and put it in somebody's body?
So the ones that I was talking about all entailed at the end of the day surgical instruments and implants.
I see.
Including head and neck injuries as well. And and what happens is the moment that a surgeon discovers that they can take all the guesswork out of the procedure, and that by the time that they actually get into the operating room, everything is mapped, fixtured, jigged, and rehearsed, they never go back. There is no reason to go back because you eliminate all the guesswork. We just, a couple of months ago, celebrated the 10th anniversary of a landmark procedure that we participated in New York, the separation of the conjoined Egyptian twins. And that already happened 10 years ago.
Wow.
Using our technology.
Amazing. So I go on a ski trip in 2 weeks. Should I take your printer from here, and just in case I break something, I can print it and bring it to the hospital?
You could. You could. Are you a good skier?
No.
Then take 2 printers.
One that print the next printer. So with all those exciting things, is it really justifiable to call it print?
I think that's an excellent question, and we discussed it a little bit before. I think that it is justifiable in the sense that in its origin, when Chuck named it stereolithography, he really was thinking in printing terminology, and that was his way of thinking stereo as in 3, lithography as in printing. And we at 3D Systems have about 8 different print engines. Some of them are direct adaptation of your universe. We take, for example, I know that Xerox is one of your partners here. We have worked with Xerox print heads and jet stacks for over 15 years. We take their heads, we modify them, and instead of jetting inks, we jet UV curable materials in a way that allows you to build, the 3rd dimension. In other technologies like extrusion or resin curing or powder sintering, whether you sinter in nylons or in metals, it's probably a bit of a stretch to call it literally printing, but because the process is the process of adding net geometries, one thin layer at a time, and fusing them together, 3D printing was the easiest way to explain it to everybody. And it stuck.
And it stuck. All right. So that was kind of the first question about the name 3D printing, but you hear a lot about 3D printing in the news, on TV. It's a hot area. Your stock, some of your competitors' stock have done really, really well in the last 5 years. is there a little bit of a hype here? Is this too much expectations out of this?
It's a good question. I think that for many years it wasn't, like I said, we've been around for 30 years. So have our peer group. For many years, it wasn't certain if 3D printing will actually mainstream, and if it would become simple enough. And one of my passions is what do we need to do to democratize it? And the notion of democratizing 3D printing is not just in terms of price points. It's not just in terms of affordability. It's in terms of making it simple enough so that anybody who wants to access it could access it not because they become experts, but because the tool is simple enough where it becomes not about how do I design for it or how do I use it, but what can I get out of it. In that sense, I don't think that 3D printing is hyped enough. I'm passionate about education. I would like every 8-year-old to have one of our Cube 3D printers like the one that we have in the back there on display. Why? Because I believe that giving young kids tomorrow's competitive skills today, which is digital literacy, sets them up for a brighter future that is more self-sufficient and sustaining. I would like to see every library in the United States have 3D printers as they are struggling to redefine, what's their role in life, in the 21st century. I would like to see it in hospitals. I would like to see it in manufacturing. I think that the greatest gap that opened as a result of the last industrial revolution is that a lot of our craftsmanship skills that we possessed, within maybe a 25-mile radius pre-industrial revolution were atrophied. And our ability to create locally in a way that is hyper-local and sustainable got eradicated. With 3D printing, craftsmanship is democratized because you no longer have to know how to actually make it. You can print it.
Right.
And that opens, completely new business models and local economies. And I think the promise and the premise of distributed, localized manufacturing.
I see. So you're saying, if you like to see every 8 years old having an access to a printer, that's the future. Very exciting to hear about the applications today, where it's going. But if you think about 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, what's the new application? Where are we going to see? What is those 8 years old going to do when they're going to become 15 with 3D printing?
It's an excellent question. The technology today is such that companies like GE are already printing parts that will go on their next generation jet engines, the LEAP engine.
I hope you're doing great QA because I'm using a lot of those engines.
There you go.
Okay,
there you go. Yeah. Worry about entertainment when you fly, not how the engine works. But the point is, 3D printed parts, as we sit here today, not 5 years into the future, are going into jet engines, they're going into your body, they're going into cars, and they're going to be everywhere. So when you think, and a lot of people ask me, well, is it cost effective? Will it replace traditional manufacturing? Some of these are the wrong questions to ask. The right question to ask is, what kind of additional performance can you get out of it? What kind of fuel efficiencies can you get out of it? Or weight reduction? Or enhanced life extension and quality of life? Et cetera, et cetera. And so the applications are really limited by our imagination. Some of the more mind-teasing applications have to do with actually printing body parts, not just implants and bone replacement, but organs. And there is a great deal of research that is happening in certain universities. And there are actually a few startups, including a Silicon Valley startup, that have been working for over 5 years now on the whole premise and promise of printing a liver, printing a heart, printing a replacement ear, and things like that from scaffolding and harvested tissue that could then complete the growth of actually living organs, which could solve, body rejection and the whole issue of transplants.
Fascinating. So
the most exciting
Yes.
part, the most exciting part to me is
Okay.
food.
food.
So
That sounds exciting.
So I'm passionate about chocolate.
Okay.
It's a little decadent in the morning, but I am. And we're printing chocolate. We have a great partnership with Hershey.
Okay.
And we're in the process of bringing several 3D printers to the market that will actually print food, starting with confection and sugars and cake toppers and chocolates. But where it goes very quickly, Guy, is into personalized nutrition and the ability to print. I mean, you print on tiles, right?
Yes, we print on tiles.
Think of the color spectrum that you can print. Think if each one of those was a flavor, and if you could actually deposit color and flavor at the pixel level, what would that do?
I mean, I'm not sure we want people to start to taste the tiles, but I understand what you're
If they're edible, why not?
And so if I get your printer, I can print chocolate in the morning, I can customize it, great image quality, all the spectrum. Can you print also some diet pills with that? Or?
Why not? I mean, I can envision a scenario, and this is not far-fetched because, you know everything that's happening with wearables and with sensors. I can imagine that 5 years from now, because we're going to have all kinds of sensing technology embedded in our clothes and shoes and wrists and ears and God knows where else, we will have our vital signs monitored all day long. And by the time that we get ready to leave the office, some app, will tell our printer at home that we're on our way and our blood sugar is a little low and we already had too much fat and blah, blah, blah. And by the time you get home, you'll get a personalized, nutritious bar that was made for you after we monitored all your vital signs all day long.
Unfortunately, I already have that. I have the Fitbit, I have the application on this. I get, I think I'm walking along, and it says, well, 500 feet to your goal. Now, the thing is, once I get to the goal and it all sort of starts going, then I go and eat a lot of chocolates that actually kind of undo that and last week. So there's always some problem with too much data on that.
Well, that's the issue, right? With all these amazing technologies, we can always get the unimagined, but we also get the unintended.
Unintended.
Right?
There's, do you imagine a day where you can print a 3D printer with your printer? That would be the end of your business probably because nobody will buy a digital printer.
Or the beginning of just selling them the design.
The design,
right?
okay.
I mean, look, every business, we live in exponential times, which means that everything happens a lot faster. Our job, and I imagine that most people in the audience are actually business owners as well. Our job is to constantly figure out how can we harness these exponential technologies, particularly at their points of convergence, because this is where eureka, this is where discovery resides, right? At the interface point between all these technologies. And how do we disrupt ourselves and others? So, if you ask me if I'm concerned about the fact that one day a printer could be a printer, absolutely not. I would lead the charge because it's an opportunity to reinvent the business model and to extend first mover advantage because our job is to disrupt, and if we don't, we get disrupted.
Somebody else would do that. Yeah. Okay, so you mentioned something that I'm gonna really want to talk about. We have over 1,000 customers in the audience. Mm-hmm. Most of them are commercial print or in the business of providing prints. They hear about this 3D. It sounds very exciting. They're not going to be in the business, I guess, of selling a replacement ear or a liver to any of their customers. But is there something they can do in 3D? Is there an opportunity for them? And if the answer is yes, what should they do about it tomorrow? How can they get into this?
So the question is, how do you get in the game?
Yes.
And look, at its core, 3D printing is another way for people to communicate, to express, to create, and to design, and to manufacture things. And when you think about what I said, to create, to express, to design, to communicate, and to manufacture, it's at the core of what you guys are selling too. You're selling tools for people to communicate, to express, to share, to distribute, to disseminate. That's what we do as well. And one of the biggest areas of opportunity in the next decade is how to re-envision the engineer's desktop. What kind of tools and capabilities will reside on an engineer's desktop, on an architect's desktop, on an educator's desktop, in a small office, and a startup, and a business, on the manufacturing floor. And that is really at the essence of the kind of consultative selling approach that you guys are practicing every day of the week and twice on Sunday. And it's the essence of your business. And so the question is, how do you get in the game? You get in the game by working with companies like us. You get in the game by putting pressure on Guy and I to make something happen for you. You get in the game by doing your homework and doing your own research to figure out how this could become complementary, how it could become an extension and a revitalization of your business model, as opposed to just reading about it passively and letting the opportunity slip by.
Interesting. I want to switch to a topic we both are passionate about, and we talked about it last night. You like to spend a lot of your time going visiting customers. I like to do that too. In your case, the customers are very different. There's somebody that replaced a liver somewhere, and then somebody that does a jet engine parts. And how do you run a company when you have such a big variety of customers?
It's a good question. I mean, I start from the notion that nothing useful happens behind my desk. So I actually gave my desk up. I don't have an office anymore. We have shared spaces, and we collaborate because we come to work to collide and to collaborate, not to hide and isolate.
Thank you for that.
Do I get my little commission now?
You get, yes, I got it.
And so what I do is I look, first I like to visit my least satisfied and most challenging customers, because that's where I learn the most. That's where I uncover opportunities about continuous improvement and enhancement, and also having the opportunity to face my shortcomings, which I think is, for all business owners, I think that the essence of our competitive advantage comes from our willingness and openness to embrace the things that we don't do very well. The things that we do well, we're going to continue to do well, and we naturally gravitate towards that. But our ability to actually get up in the morning and get passionate and excited about the things that we don't do so well, that takes a different style. And so that's one of the criteria to visiting customers. And we're organized into business units. So our healthcare is its own practice. Our design and manufacturing is its own practice. Over the last 4 years, we created a consumer and retail arm within the business, and that is now beginning to really take hold. For the first time, we have printers that are actually sold at below $1,000. We developed a whole new area of digitization with devices that actually can scan you that start at $399. I call those physical photography devices, because they capture something physically and it's instantly ready to print. We began to think of 3D also in terms of computing interactions, and developed for $599 a new haptic arms, if you will, or a 3D stylus that allows you to actually touch what you are designing. And by virtue of touching it, you get a haptical force feedback, and the sensation that you get is as if you're modeling in Play-Doh or in digital clay, because you actually get the feedback. All these areas are converging with virtual reality, with other devices like the Oculus Rift and some of the heads-up displays that Microsoft talked about yesterday. And it's opening a whole new field of perceptual computing with 3D printing that literally begins to connect the virtual with the actual. For the first time in recorded human history, we can think about something, we can capture it, and we can print it, or we can do the reverse. We can take something that is physical, quickly digitize it, and begin to reverse engineer it. And that is going to create endless opportunities, and I have no idea how I got there.
Me neither, but it was fascinating. Actually,
Went off on a tangent.
You talk about scanning, about taking things, design, reverse engineering. It remind us a lot of what we do in our industry.
It's all connected, and
Right.
it's all about workflows and all the things that you guys are the masters of the universe at.
Yes, so what is the importance of workflow?
It's huge.
Yeah.
It's huge, especially when we begin to think about what would the factory of the future look like, right? Is it going to be mass manufacturing, or is it going to be mass customization? What's going to be the typical order cycle, when companies like Amazon will want to deliver it to your doorstep on a drone? So when you begin to think about what will the factory of the future look like, a great deal of benefit, value, monetization is going to come from companies' abilities to master the workflow, and to master the workflow on a per-item basis, which is just an enormous opportunity. And I think that your company, EFI, is at the heart of the knowledge that is required to actually unlock value and monetization.
I think I didn't bring that much money today to give you for all the nice plugs. Thank you.
And it was even unrehearsed.
Unrehearsed, for sure.
Yeah.
What's fascinating as I listen to you, so yesterday, same time, we had the CEO of the largest, if you want, 2D, Donnelly, and today we have you, and there's a lot of similarity in the talk about the world going to personalization. The workflow is important. Mass production is going to go away. There's so much parallel, different words, different accent. By the way, the last 15 years, I prepared this audience for the Israeli accent. They very well, they dream at night with the
How are we doing, by the way? Is this okay? It seems like a reality TV show, right? I mean, what's the likelihood that you get stuck with two Israelis on stage?
It happened here before a couple of times, but yes. It's happened. It seems like it's more likely.
So it's a sequel.
It's a sequel, exactly. Good thing there's only like 7 million people in Israel, so it's like at some point I'm going to run out of guests. Anyway, I want to ask about another topic, color, another self-serving. But is color getting to be important? Is this going to be important at some point in 3D printing?
Yes, color is very important. We today are the only 3D printing company that can actually print in CMYKW full color with millions of color combinations in a single print. We've had that technology for quite some time. It's an MIT patented technology from the 90s. We just, a couple of weeks ago, so we could do it in printers, Guy, that range in cost from $25,000 to maybe $150,000. And we can do it very, very fast, both in powders and plastics. A couple of weeks ago, we acquired a startup from the United Kingdom called But Objects that actually figured out how to do it in a desktop printer under $5,000 by mixing filaments. And so this whole idea of being able to print in full color, in vibrant colors, and democratizing it to a point now that you can do it at sub $5,000 and down the road probably sub 3 and sub 2 is going to unlock huge potential. And again, when it comes to how does one manage color in mass customization, how does one unlock opportunities and applications, and what are those killer apps, that's another area where you probably have some very interesting know-how and technology as well, because everything that you solved for, whether you print on a substrate, on paper, on a Tesla wrap, or on a tile, the only difference is we do it in successive multiple layers.
But eventually this will be an image there, and people appreciate the beauty and the color.
And also, I mean, if you want to do finite element analysis, color is important. If you want to design a complex mechanism and you want to see every moving part in different color to study it or to communicate it or to have cross-functional design reviews, color plays a part in everything that we do, in beauty, in life cycle events, in collections, but also in design, in manufacturing, in research, in analysis. Color is very important.
Right.
That's how we experience everything around
Absolutely,
us,
yeah.
right?
So our vision gives us great color, and obviously we want to...
Blue and white. Yeah.
Right. Yes, well, we're not a good example of that, that's for sure. Yeah. And we did not coordinate that. So I want to switch a little bit from 3D specifically to more about your company. So, first, there are other you're one of the two largest, but there's other companies out there, and, every once in a while you hear about another company is going to enter that. As a year ago, a big company announced.
You mean like HP?
Exactly. You get announced that they will be, in 3D one day. So how do you differentiate your company? How do you keep your company ahead?
Okay, so I think this is where, I come from the school of thought in business that says that business model innovation is even more important in this day and age than just technology innovation. And it's important to remember that because in companies like EFI, in companies like 3D Systems, it's all about the technology, and we have decades of experience creating product roadmaps and innovating, and particularly in jobs like ours, it's always about architecting that and thinking through what technology can deliver versus what customers can really use in the here and now, and how to monetize it in ways that give you competitive advantage. So in our case, it's all about where can we lead and where can we lead decisively. So in personalized healthcare, we probably have a 5-year advantage today.
5-year advantage.
In terms of technology, workflow, and the right materials, the right printers, the procedures, the digital thread, end to end. In areas like direct metal printing, where we can print today in materials like titanium and cobalt and stainless steel and aluminum, we have a clear advantage as it pertains to actually embedding it onto the manufacturing floor. In areas like patterns for investment casting for aerospace, but also for precious metals and jewelry, we have a huge advantage. In areas like dental restorations, aligners, just anecdotally, one of our good customers, Invisalign, the people that make the clear braces, last year alone printed over 20 million unique and distinct aligners using our technology in a factory that has about 100 printers. So when you think about doing it at convincing scale, we have an advantage. In full color, we have an advantage. And quite frankly, nothing happens until somebody buys something, right?
Yes.
And so we're blessed to have a lot of good partners and resellers that multiplex what we do. And the long-term relationship that we have with our resellers, I think, is one of the largest differentiators in terms of our sustainable competitive advantage over time. Now, large companies and small companies will enter our space because it's attractive, and it's a gateway into the future of design and manufacturing and healthcare and arts and so forth. So they're going to come. My job is to worry about how can I do what I do a little better every day, how do I execute better, and how do I concentrate in areas where my technology and my access to market can give me a first mover advantage and can give me the kind of monetization that's attractive to my customers, to my partners, to my shareholders, because I also happen to believe that there is no such thing as a commodity. It's a state of mind.
Right. Yeah. Okay, fascinating. Now, a lot of, you talked about not just innovation in products, also business model innovation. Definitely in technology, there's the notion that also you differentiate with the culture. Apple has a very unique culture. Part of it is secrecy and so on. A lot of people talk about it. I talked a little bit about the EFI culture a couple of nights ago. Is there a unique culture in 3D Systems?
Yes, we're very scrappy and we're very entrepreneurial. We believe in doing more with less.
If you need something, you just print it.
We believe that it can be done. We are very big on perseverance, which I happen to, one of the sayings that kind of stuck in my mind as a young boy as I was growing up was what Winston Churchill said, never, never, ever give up. Mm-hmm. And so perseverance is kind of a cultural touchstone for us. We're also very diverse and very distributed. And so diversity and collaboration are at the heart of who we are. And we also have a very interesting way to incentivize our team. And it's not so much about just compensation by way of a base salary or a bonus or a commission. We have the vast majority of our employees are shareholders in the company. And the philosophy that I employed when I joined 3D Systems a little over 11 years ago was that eligibility for stock awards will not be determined based on somebody's position, rank, title, span of control. It will be positioned based on their contribution to the company and whether or not they are characterized as a long-distance runner in the organization, regardless of their level in the company. And it created a very performance-driven culture and also the opportunity sometimes to have awkward, difficult discussions, when a more senior person would come and say, how come one of my direct reports is getting it and I'm not getting so much? And the answer is, it's not because you're a VP or a chief. It's because that maybe this year you're not quite reaching as deep as you showed me you could reach last year. Yeah. And so over many years, it created a differentiation. The other interesting thing, Guy, and we talked about this at dinner last night, we also made lots of acquisitions as a company over the last 5 years. And so we became a melting pot. Because, we're learning from and with very successful businessmen and women that in their own right started companies and took them to a certain size. And there is a lot of good that they brought into us. And it's a very interesting, vibrant melting pot because on the one hand, we don't want to dilute our identity and culture. On the other hand, we believe that by being open to learn from the newcomers into our organization, we're actually diversifying and making the culture richer and more meaningful. And that's an interesting daily challenge because it forces me and others in the company to exercise muscles that sometimes we didn't even know we had.
So, great that you mentioned the M&A because I wanted to ask you, you're doing a lot of M&A. You mentioned last night about 10 a year.
Roughly for the last few years, yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot. Coming from me, definitely. We do.
Well, you've done quite a bit of M&A.
We did quite a bit,
well,
but we do 4 or 5 here, and so it's definitely not as much. And we know there's a lot of work in integrating and so on. So first, are you planning to continue to do M&A at that rate? And there's so many companies. Which companies you acquire, and how you think about that?
Well, I happen to have brought a list with me.
Yeah, no, it's a small forum here, and it will nothing.
It's all confidential.
It's all confidential.
We began to consolidate and assemble technology about. It's actually very interesting. The 08 reset or crash happened. Yeah. And by 09, we finished our turnaround, and we're ready to have our coming out party. The universe didn't collaborate all that well, Yeah. And so we had some discussions with the senior team and with the board, and I said, hey, look, every season presents opportunities to make money. This is not exactly how we planned on 2009 to happen, but it's a good time to make acquisitions. It's a good time to begin to consolidate because a lot of good assets were quite depressed. We were generating free cash. And so we began acquisitions at very attractive prices, and we had a clear first mover advantage because we're the only consolidator for the first couple of years. We didn't have any opposition. So we got to pick some really prime technologies, building blocks, assets. And we're getting to a point now where we have assembled most of what we need. So are we going to make as many acquisitions in the coming couple of years? Probably not. Are we retiring from doing it? Probably not. It's a core competency inside of 3D Systems, and we want to continue to be a leader. We did another interesting thing, Guy, in the last year and a half. We started a venture arm inside of 3D Systems. We call it 3D Ventures. And so in a given year, we will make probably up to a dozen kind of seed level or first round type investments in interesting startups that could become part of a future ecosystem in 3D printing. And that allows us to have a very firm finger on the pulse of what's to come, because it'll be kind of a naive notion that we can invent everything on our own.
Yeah.
It's virtually impossible. So it gives us an opportunity now to have a first look at what's happening out there, new companies, new business models, new applications, access to talent. And our notion is that a third of these investments will fail. A third of them will probably go on to be enormously successful, and we will supply them, and eventually they'll have some kind of a liquidity event and we'll get a nice return. And about a third will become acquisition targets.
Either for you
or somebody else. We'll have to compete. Yeah.
Yes. So, okay, let me switch now to more you personally. So we'll start with the professional side. First of all, how do you become a CEO? If you look back at your career, was any key events that made you successful, made you a leader, that you can say, great that I did that?
Yes. It's, if you Google CEO school, I think it's one of the first things that you're not going to find on Google, right? It's
a lot of them are dropouts.
Yeah. And so for me, I was really blessed from, this is only my second real professional job. If I discount the fact that I mopped floors, when I got to the US and sold some vacuum cleaners door to door back in the day. This is only my second real job. My first real job was with Sealed Air Corp, the company that invented the bubble wrap back in the day.
By the way, some of them are being printed on our Viewtech LED. Yeah.
And it was an amazing journey because I joined Sealed Air when it had about 78 million in revenue and about 400 employees. And when I left Sealed Air nearly 23 years later, I was one of the top 4 guys, and the company had over 5 billion in revenue and about 18,000 employees. And I had about 3 really good mentors. And so, I think that to be a leader, or to be a CEO, to be a leader, some of it you don't learn, some of it you possess. And we either squander it and not use it, or we learn how to harness it. But the rest comes from having good guides, good mentors, and some amazing experiences. I was blessed to have 3 outstanding mentors to whom I'm still grateful to this day, because I know that but for their mentorship, I wouldn't be half the man that I am. And that's and then I had some amazing experiences. I always raised my hand to take assignments, even when they were kind of lateral assignments, not progressive assignments. I went to Europe twice. I worked in Asia Pacific for a few years. I went from engineering to marketing to sales to operations to managing regions. And so I was also blessed to be in a company that needed talent, in a company that was a high growth company and an expansion company, and a company that was willing to take a chance on a short guy with funny accent, that was willing to go do all these things. And I was also lucky. I mean, a lot of people look at our success and they think that somehow, it's all us. I'm blessed to have amazing, amazing people, and I've always had amazing people that journeyed with me. I'm blessed to have an amazing wife. I couldn't do half of what I'm doing if I didn't have that kind of a backbone. And I'll tell you a funny story. When I got the call to come look at this job, I was actually in London doing budgets for next year, visiting my units in the UK, and I got this phone call from a headhunter that told me, Avi, your name came up, you're recommended, there is this company in California, blah, 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 they're on the verge of bankruptcy, but the technology is very interesting. So I did the whole due diligence, and I went to my wife and I said, hey, look, I've been with Sealed Air for almost 23 years. It's very comfortable, it's very familiar, I'm one of the top guys, I can retire here. On the other hand, there is this company that I feel that all of my preparation in life prepared me to go do it. But I said, honey, if I take this job, I may be out on my ass in a year. There may not be when I joined 3D, we didn't have enough cash to finish the year. The first thing that I had to do was get down on my knees and call all of my suppliers, introduce myself, and tell them that I couldn't pay them. No. And that I will, if they will believe in me, but that they had no reason to believe in me because they don't know me. So my wife said to me, she said, here's the deal, Avi. If you don't take this job, I don't think I'll be able to live with you because you will forever torture and torment yourself for passing on this opportunity. So she gave me permission to do it. And that was huge because the first few years, it was really, really tough. And when we became a profitable and a growth company, I wasn't sure that we would ever hit it because many people thought that the window for 3D printing kind of came and went.
Mm-hmm. Still there.
So being lucky and having good mentors and being surrounded by good people that love you enough to tell you when you're full of shit is very important. Finally, we got to...
Definitely, I am surrounded by a lot of people like that. Any failure you want to share with us? Any big mistake you wish you'd not have done?
The reality is that my resume of failures is long. What is unique about it is that I'm quick to recognize my failures, so I don't allow them to fester. And I talk about my failures openly. One of the things that you talk about culture. We talked about culture before. One of the things that I like to do is I like to celebrate failures because there is a lot of learning and we pay the tuition, right? We pay the tuition to learn the lesson. And so I made some mistakes in hiring. And the mistake wasn't that I hired wrong. The mistake was that I didn't fire fast enough. Yeah. And I didn't fire fast enough because I'm a compassionate person. Yeah. But the lesson in all of that is, there is never a good time to make a difficult decision. And by the time that I know that it needs to be made, everybody in my organization knows. And the person that's going to be impacted knows. And it's actually more compassionate to do it quickly than not. I'm not cured from some of my mistakes. I'm still, it's work in progress. It's a journey. I made some mistakes by underestimating the complexity of working on multiple big initiatives at the same time, and by overestimating my bench strength and not realizing that that the collective wisdom and expertise wasn't there to pull it off. And as long as I can continue to be honest with myself and be open to feedback from others, I hope that I will make more mistakes, because that's how I learn.
Very nice. All right, so switching to the personal life. Obviously, you have a very busy job. What do you do outside of work? Do you have any hobbies?
I do a lot of things because I have to say that my name is Avi Reichental, and I'm a workaholic, right? I mean, it's and I'm a workaholic because I love what I do, and I do what I love. And that was one of the best advices that my father gave me many years ago. Let him rest in peace. He said to me when I was about 5 or 6 years old, he said, "Son, if you find something that you're really passionate about, it will never feel like work." I didn't understand it at the time, but he was right. But I also learned that it's important to pay it forward. So I teach. I'm on the faculty of Singularity University with Ray Kurzweil and Peter Diamandis, and we teach primarily C-level students about the disruption of exponential technologies. I am one of the trustees of the Cooper Hewitt National Design Museum, which is one of the Smithsonian museums. We just opened it a few weeks ago after 3 years of renovation. I'm on the board of a recovery home in Los Angeles for alcoholics, drug addicts, and hardcore criminals. It's called Beit Tshuva. I work with the National Children Oral Health Organization. It's called the American Tooth Fairy, to provide underserved kids with dental hygiene and services. I'm on the X Prize Foundation's Innovation Board, which is a very exciting thing. And after I do all of that, I like horses, and I have a few, so I love it. There's nothing
You're
more,
riding them.
riding them. There's nothing more beautiful for me than taking an early morning or a late afternoon trail ride and just experience the beauty of the universe. I like sailing. I like downhill skiing, although my knees are not cooperating as much as
we can print
as much as they used to. I like good food, and I like good wine, and I like people. I like people. I like to learn with and from people. And by doing all these things, I think that it actually re-energizes me to be even more productive at what I do. I sleep very little. I sleep about 5 hours a night.
That's a long night.
I figure that the rest I will catch up when I'm permanently asleep, right?
I think about it the same way. Going to be billions of years I'm going to be sleeping.
And that life is not about the destination. The destination is identical for all of us. Yeah. It's about the journey.
That's very nice. Any music that you like the most, or books that you want to recommend?
I have a very eclectic taste in music. I like rock and roll. One of my favorite bands of all time is the Steve Miller Band. But I'm into no applause for the Steve Miller Band. And actually, it's funny, I've been listening to the Steve Miller Band since I was a teenager, and a couple of years ago, I actually got to meet their lead bass player, Kenny Lee Lewis, and we became friends, and now he comes and he hangs out with us all the time and plays, nice. Which is like, amazing. I like Yemenite music because my stepmother is from Yemen, and so I grew up with it in weddings and in bar mitzvahs, and so I like Yemenite music. I like Brazilian music. I like jazz. I'm not big on hip-hop.
Okay, so we're not going to finish with hip-hop.
Books. Couple of good books that I actually keep by my bedside. One is called Sacred Housekeeping. It's written by a dear friend of mine, Harriet Rosetto, who started this Jewish rehab in Los Angeles about 29 years ago. And it's all about how to show up every day as a responsible human being.
What is Jewish rehab? Everybody get together and blame their mother? Or what is
this is after this is after they spend a few. I mean, it's interesting because it's a Jewish rehab. We take everybody. It's not about being Jewish.
No.
But what was interesting in Los Angeles 20, 30 years ago is that Jews were in denial that they had problems with drinking and drugging and criminality, and the reality is that as Jews, the statistics are equal. These kinds of human conditions don't differentiate and distinguish between races or positions or ranks, and so anyway, her book is about wrestling with the human condition. It's not about addiction. It's about, how do we wrestle with all the parts of ourselves and show up as a coordinated and integrated human being. The other book I just got, it's written by my good friend Peter Diamandis, who started X Prize and Singularity and a bunch of other things, and it's called Bold. And Bold is about exponential entrepreneurship and what it takes to actually be a successful entrepreneur in this day and age. So I recommend both of them highly.
Very good. And now a question that, in a mysterious way, got to be a tradition here. Any movies you recommend?
You mean besides Debbie Does Dallas? Yes, I actually.
Was that the yes on Debbie or
no?
Okay.
That was just to make sure that I understood the gist of the tradition.
Yes.
That I'm carrying on the tradition.
Yes.
I recently saw the movie. It's one of the Oscar-nominated movies. It's called The Imitation Game, and it's a very serious movie, and it's about. Not just the Herculean effort that the Brits put into cracking the code on Enigma and shortening World War II, but it's a beautiful movie about how they then went and penalized the guy that cracked it because he happened to be a homosexual. And I think that it was and at the end I don't want to spoil the movie, but at the end he commits suicide. And it's a true story, and it's extremely well documented and superbly acted. And I don't have any investment in the movie except that it really touched me to the point of tears. So I highly recommend it.
Very good. So you passed the question on movies. Anything else I was supposed to ask you, or you want to say?
I heard something, some rumor that you guys were discussing this acronym GPS all week.
You heard that too?
Yeah.
Okay.
A little bird whispered in my ear. So I was going to say to you, why don't you just go print something?
Nice. I have to say, you came very prepared for this, including the history.
I had a good coach.
Very good. Avi, it was phenomenal. We learned a lot. I learned a lot. I enjoyed a lot. Thank you very much for doing it. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was great. Very nice.